Ironically, this is a video about starters, but it's the last video on Gigantamax Forms for at least a month. I actually do have other topics, by the way. Starter Pokemon consistently bring a charm that very few Pokemon can create. And with every new generation's form mechanic, there's always the hugely mentioned desire for other starter Pokemon to be given new forms as well. The Gen 1 and Gen 3 trios all got Mega Evolutions, and with the expansion giving Gigantamax Forms to all of Gen 8's trio, and Gen 1's, again. Let's rank what old starter Pokemon would have the best new Gigantamax Forms in the DLC. And while giving a form to one starter from a generation would more than likely mean the whole trio would be getting them, we'll be going case by case for each of these soulful Pokemon and picking out the 10 best starters to receive these forms. Hope you enjoy. Number 10. Samurott. Samurott always felt like the most notable starting Pokemon out of Generation 5. It had a very unique design that looked borderline legendary if it was on its own, and a little bigger, and has the possibility to be exceptionally upgraded with any new generation's mechanic. Samurott could be given a very minimalistic form change and still come off as one of the greats with how its original look is just set up to shine on its own. Maybe a larger beard, possessed glaring eyes, really amplify that samurai otter combination. What we're looking for here is a Gigantamax Lapras look with small changes in Lapras' shell now as Gigantamax Samurott's hat. Sure, maybe Emboar is a little more known for being the third fire fighting in a row, and fire types are usually the go-to popular pick on their own, but Samurott is a water type that really stands out to me, feels like a hidden gem of starter trios, and has a well-acclaimed middle ground between the other two Gen 5 starters with a combination of the strong, fierce look of Emboar and the lean, royal look of Serperior. It's even the only starter Pokemon to start on 2 legs and move over to 4. Maybe Snivy to Serperior does that as well, but Serperior has no legs, so that's 2 to 0. Or 1 if its body counts as a leg. Usually it's the other way around for starter Pokemon. They start on 4 legs, it evolves once, you get excited and beg for it to stay on 4 legs, and then it evolves again and gets up onto 2 and that transforms into a strongly worded tweet to Game Freak. Samurott's a rare one that could possess a magical water-bending new form and be confidently placed as a top-tier Gigantamax, both in looks and reception. Number 9. Torterra. Torterra was a personal favorite of mine when roaming through Generation 4. It would always be my go-to pick, mostly because I learned Earthquake and that was the most satisfying move to use on a ground type through your playthrough. And it being a beefy grass starter Pokemon with that added bonus felt great. It was also the first generation I decided to pick the grass starter, as I felt bad for not picking them in previous generations with how many there were to choose, and eventually became my reminder of Venusaur. Torterra felt like it could be made to have a really great form that would surprise everyone and make this Pokemon more appreciated and remembered a little more. This Gigantamax form could swap Torterra into looking like a more ravaging terror, which would work really well as a blow-up for the humble, chilled out look Torterra has in its original design. With Corsola going extinct, Torterra has to get mad and pumped to protect its back tree. Venusaur is also getting one that could really resemble the idea of what could be done to Torterra. I'm sure there are a lot of us that would love to see that little village on its back grow and expand and see what nature can evolve into this time. There can be Gigantamax Snorlax as the joke form, and Gigantamax Torterra as a similar serious form. We can really nourish and grow the environment riding on the back of this tortoise with a larger forest, put a tire swing on that tree, and maybe the stones turning into monuments and mountains, possibly at a lake. Could even cover the entire thing in one of those glass domes and make it a greenhouse. Put some bugs and birds in there too, possibly some cavemen, maybe some fish. Really just a nice little ecosystem of people, plants, and Pisces living in the glass dome simulation on Torterra's back. Number 8. Sceptile and Blaziken. The two of these seem pretty tied for how good their Gigantamax forms would be, and the reasons they could be given some. With Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire being a somewhat recent remake that highlighted the Generation 3 trio and gave them all Mega Evolutions, they might be a little less of a priority to receive newer forms compared to other generations, but do still feel like deserving Pokemon. Blaziken has that popular fire Pokemon prowess, and began the firefighting dual-type spread, while Sceptile does have that calm, nonchalant, cool kid look for the more hipster Pokemon fans. Sure, throw me in that group. But also has a Mega Evolution that needs to be reworked. Real simple changes like a full-on fire suit for Blaziken and having it yell Flame On as it Gigantamaxes would work wonders, while Sceptile gains its own suit of grass with bigger bushes surrounding its body as it yells I didn't trim today while Gigantamaxing. These would make for a duo of superhuman looking Pokemon in sleek outfits that could really enhance their looks and one-up their Mega Evolutions. They both already have some serious and tough looking Mega Evolutions, and the two bipedal creatures might just make a wonderful duo of two-legged Power Ranger figures staring down at the competition in battles. Number 7. Incineroar. Incineroar got into Smash. Who's to say it can't just go up from there? With that fiery champion belt and stature of a muscle man god, who's to say the fiercest looking Generation 7 final starter Pokemon can't be given a form to bulk up? Incineroar's stature just looks prime for this type of look, and having it loom over the field and haunt you with its gaze creates the idea of a Gigantamax form that would be remembered. Really, we just gotta tone up its physique even more, give it the Machamp treatment, and now we've got 2 forms here ready to fight it out for that belt. We're already doing Sword and Shield pay-per-play, might as well throw in Pokemon boxing matches as well. Incineroar looks to possess what Gigantamax bipedal Pokemon are known for, and feels like the best pick for the last generation's need for new forms. Number 6. Empoleon. Sort of an underappreciated Pokemon, and the only Water Steel type. Actually the only Water Steel Pokemon, as none of its pre-evolutions are this typing, and not a single other Pokemon has been given this dual type. Which is actually weird to look up, and I had to fact check like 3 times, because it just feels like Water Steel would make a great design choice for any new Pokemon, and wouldn't be too hard to come up with new species for this type of Pokemon. An octopus, in armor, a fish, in armor, the ocean? All in all, that makes Empoleon a real special kind of Pokemon. It can not only be a great Transformer type of Gigantamax form, but also really show us what that Royal Emperor look could bring. Maybe it transforms into a steel tank with a Hydro Cannon, and a crown. Have a Super Soaker shoot-off against Gigantamax Blastoise, or turn into a submarine. If a Baron bird can do it, then a Metal Water bird on its own can too. Even having Empoleon enhanced to be that middle ground between sleek yet bulky, and taking matters into its own Imperial hands with a trident and shield could make a fitting Pokemon form for Sword and Shield. Empoleon has a well and able to be utilized look, and is one of those final starter Pokemon that at least deserves it. Number 5. Feraligatr. There's something about Generation 2 Pokemon being skipped over for any type of form or incentive package that really feels a little unfortunate. When seeing a new mechanic that goes back through each generation to hand out some greatness, and not seeing any of the Gen 2 starters being given something, you know they need to make it high up onto this list. Feraligatr has been a loved Pokemon for centuries. Back in the 1800s, they would draw Croconaw on the walls in their caves with rocks and chisels. There could be many changes given to this ferocious alligator. Still keep that silly personality that it has with that super happy look, and what we even imagined Ash's Totodile to evolve into if it got there. Let's make a Gigantamax form that could be silly and happy, just jumping around in its big, skinny Godzilla form. Or we could put it on all 4 legs and make it a funny looking regular alligator. Sort of like the change with Toxtricity turning into its Gigantamax form, and making it just as lean and hunched over, but surrounding it by a bunch of people from Florida trying to fight it, to make it that typical type of alligator. You could also make it fat. Feraligatr does look like it could be upgraded to a chunky loving Dragonite type of Pokemon. But altogether, we really just want to see one of the starters from Generation 2 be given something after all this time for being from a region that's as iconic as Johto is. Number 4. This is where the territory gets a little heated, and figuring out who'd be the most popular and desired pick gets a little tougher. Some of the previous Pokemon are definitely a lot of people's favorites, but trying to align the love for each starter Pokemon, and adding in ones that are likely to have amazing forms based off of them, and which ones are the ones you guys want to see the most, might make ranking them a little hard. But that brings us to Infernape. Infernape manages to be, more than likely, the most popular and loved of the firefighting starter army. That could make for an amazing giant of a Pokemon, and fight as well as the comments after me saying that it's the most popular. Honestly, just making Infernape taller with very small changes, only focusing on it looking more calming, seems pretty fitting. If Cinderace can just stand above a ball of fire with grown ears, Infernape can do the same pose with a longer head torch and blank stare. It is one of Ash's most storied Pokemon. Imagine a haunted presence towering above you going Paul, Paul, after you Gigantamax it. Or just an even more focused Zen creature that's gotten over its anime past and is filled with clarity, emanating from a form that grows itself emotionally. The enhanced Infernape design could combine it with the mystical appeal of how Gigantamax Pokemon are presented to create a Pokemon form that emits a rare feeling and focuses on the attributes of the zodiac animals fire types are known for, making Infernape that sharper and smarter focused looking creature. Number 3. Swampert. I just want to point out that Gigantamax Toxtricity is basically in the exact same pose as Swampert here. It's really just laid out as the blueprints for it. If there's one Pokemon that's memed enough and deserves a serious form, Swampert would be primed to get that. We have that bulked up Mega Evolution, and can now have a more slender, skinny, stretched out body and that blanked out stare Gigantamax Pokemon usually have like it fasted a little too hard. I mean, that's a lot of body mass in its Mega. If we just took some of it and expanded outwards like making spaghetti, I'm sure it has enough of a build to be stretched out to the size of a typical Gigantamax form. I do always end up gravitating towards the beefy ground-type starters, but Swampert's characteristics can be really worked out, keeping it as a muscular Pokemon, and just change its routine to fit the new forms as it launches out of the swamps and saunas. You know what? Why don't we make it even more bipedal? No more hunching over. Back straight, let's see some posture. Number 2. Greninja. There's no way a starter Pokemon list can go without Greninja nearing the top. Unless it's a worse starter Pokemon list. Or a bad starter Pokemon list. Or a... One second, I just need to get out the title generator. An awful starter Pokemon list. A dreadful starter Pokemon list. An unacceptable starter Pokemon list. A Greninja is the superstar of Generation 6's starting roster, and Generation 6 in general. It could honestly get away with being given its own form, and forgetting its other two pals while getting no backlash for it and being praised. Didn't see anyone asking for Ash Chestnut or Ash Delphox, or Delphox at all. We could really go for that Generation 8 Gigantamax form focus, where it highlights parts of Greninja's well-known attributes, like its tongue scarf or its shurikens. We could have Greninja holding gigantic shurikens that look like shields, while it stands tall and dances around and juggles them. But back to that tongue scarf, you know how Empoleon makes that pedestal? What if Greninja did that with its tongue? Would of course have to get poisoned when Gigantamaxing like that, however. Can't have people licking the floors. Greninja seems like the most suitable and top of the charts popular pick for a new form in any generation, and while Ash Greninja might feel like it would be its only exclusive form, the amount of positivity this Pokemon generates would definitely allow it to be given something special, at least in the future. Number 1. If there is one starter Pokemon that comes off as the most deserving of getting a new form, it would have to be the most underappreciated starter Pokemon there is, Charizard. But Typhlosion takes the number 1 spot. You have to know how much Typhlosion deserves. Being the fire starter Pokemon that comes in the generation right after Boxar Bro Charizard, that's a tall order to fill. Typhlosion just has such a good base. The only change it's gotten in years is the fire on its neck removed. That's not a change, that's a disservice. We gotta make up for that and really emphasize Typhlosion's flames. Tongue scarf, meet flame color. What about an explosive back? You know what? Flames. Flames everywhere. Gotta make up for that removal. And who needs to be subtle anyways? Throwing things straight in people's faces usually works better. Unless you're me. But for more aware people, I'm sure they can enjoy a hot mess too. There's just so much you can do with this very humble and clean look that Typhlosion has to be amped up to be cooler and even more prominent than this Pokemon already is. I know that us Typhlosion fans are out there, but we're just a little quiet. Let's hope we see a form burst out for the many designs we've imagined Typhlosion being upgraded into, as this Generation 2 hero is not only the most deserving, but one that could relish and be praised for any design it can transform into.